Want to get cheat sheets, audiobooks, lessons, apps, and much more every month for free? Just click the link in the description to get your free language gifts of the month.
नमस्ते, मेरा नाम प्रेरणा है। आपसे मिलकर खुशी हुई। Hi, my name is Prerna. Nice to meet you. Welcome to HindiPod101.com's Hindi in 3 minutes, the fastest, easiest, and most fun way to learn Hindi. In this series, we're going to learn basic Hindi expressions. It's super easy and it only takes 3 minutes. In this lesson, you're going to learn how to introduce yourself in Hindi. There are only 2 sentences you need to know. नमस्ते, मेरा नाम प्रेरणा है। आपसे मिलकर खुशी हुई। Hi, my name is Prerna. Nice to meet you. Start by saying Namaste. Then say मेरा नाम, then your name, and then say है. Please repeat after me. Namaste. मेरा नाम प्रेरणा है. Finally, say आप से मिलकर खुशी हुई. Together we have Namaste. मेरा नाम प्रेरणा है. आपसे मिलकर खुशी हुई. Let's take a closer look at the first sentence. The first word is Namaste. Namaste in Hindi is equivalent to hello, which can be used at any time of the day. Next is Mera. The word Mera means my. This is a way to refer to yourself, which can be used by both men and women. Next, we have Naam. The word Naam means name. Then you say your name. And finally, we have Hai. Hai is attached to the end of the sentence and literally means to exist. In the first sentence, we have the construction Mera plus Naam plus your name plus Hai. The structure of simple Hindi sentences is different from English. In Hindi, the word order is subject, object, verb. The second sentence we have is आपसे मिलकर खुशी हुई. आपसे मिलकर खुशी हुई can be used by both men and women. It means nice to meet you. It's used when meeting someone for the first time. आप से मिलकर खुशी हुई. आप से मिलकर खुशी हुई. Now it's time for Prerna's points. Indian people don't generally shake hands. You're better off using the Namaste gesture. However, in a business situation, you might want to use a handshake. Shaking hands is more common in big cities where Western customs are more familiar. In the last lesson, we learned how to introduce ourselves in Hindi. In this lesson, we're going to learn how to use good manners when we thank people. क्या आप तैयार हैं? Are you ready? तो चलिए शुरू करें. So let's begin. There are several ways to thank someone, but let's start with the easiest. It's just one word. धन्यवाद. धन्यवाद. Dhanyavad means thank you. You can emphasize धन्यवाद by adding बहुत, which means very much. So it becomes बहुत धन्यवाद. बहुत धन्यवाद. In Hindi, there are other ways to express one's gratitude. Dhanyavad comes from Sanskrit and it sounds quite formal. That's why some people prefer to use Urdu expressions, which are felt to be more colloquial. A more colloquial expression for thank you in Hindi is shukriya. Shukriya can also be preceded by bahut, which means very much. Bahut shukriya. Bahut shukriya. So now you have learned how to say thank you in Hindi. But how will you reply if someone else says thank you to you? In Hindi, your welcome is sometimes expressed as swagat hai. The expression swagat hai means welcome. Swagat hai. You can also respond to someone who has thanked you by using another expression. This is koi baat nahi, which literally means it's nothing. Koi baat nahi. So, when someone says dhanyavad to you, you can simply reply with swagat hai or koi baat nahi. Now it's time for Prerna's points. Just as with the expressions for thank you and please, Indians do not always use you're welcome in everyday situations. It's a concept literally translated from English. Native speakers often show politeness simply by using polite pronouns and verb forms while speaking. In the last lesson, we learned how to show gratitude to people by saying Dhanyavad. In this lesson, we'll learn some of the most common greetings used in India. क्या आप तैयार हैं? Are you ready? तो चलिए शुरू करें. So, let's begin. Let's start with a greeting you're sure to have heard before. Namaste. This is a word that is so closely associated with India and Indian culture that it has become famous all over the world. Namaste. Namaste. The word namaste is made out of two Sanskrit words, nama and te, which have been joined to mean I salute you. We use namaste as a formal as well as a friendly greeting. It's used when people meet at any time of the day, morning, noon, or evening. A slightly more formal variation on namaste, which you may or may not have heard before, is namaskar. Namaskar. Use this and you'll surely impress your Indian friends. In Hindi, using different greetings for each time of the day is not very common. When talking with friends, we usually just use the English phrases. But there are equivalent Hindi versions. They're just not used that often. If you meet someone before noon, you can say Suprabhat. Suprabhat. For later in the day, you can say Shubh Sandhya. Shubh Sandhya. But for most of the time, you can just say Namaste and not worry about it. As we learned in this lesson, Namaste can mean both hello and goodbye. However, this is not the only way of saying goodbye in Hindi. A parting expression that we can use for all occasions is Fir milenge, which means see you. Fir milenge. Fir milenge. The first word fir means again, and the second word milenge means we will meet. Let's look at one more expression, alvida. Alvida is an Urdu word which means goodbye. Alvida. It is an appropriate choice when parting for a long time. Now, it's time for Prerna's points. The easiest way of saying your goodbyes in Hindi is by using Namaste. Take a slight bow with folded hands and say Namaste. Namaste and Namaskar both come from Sanskrit and mean something like I honor you or I bow to you. In the last lesson, we learned the most common forms of greeting in Hindi. Do you remember them? In this lesson, we are going to learn a very useful phrase. Do you speak English? If you find yourself in a situation where you need assistance in English, this phrase can be a lifesaver. And because you're asking it in Hindi, you can be sure that everyone will understand what you are saying even if their answer is no. Let's start with a formal expression. First, though, we need to make a note that in Hindi, verbs change depending on the number and gender of the noun. So, when asking a man if he speaks English, you would say, क्या आप अंग्रेजी बोलते हैं? क्या आप अंग्रेजी बोलते हैं? But to ask a woman if she speaks English, you'd say, क्या आप अंग्रेजी बोलती हैं? क्या आप अंग्रेजी बोलती हैं? Let's have a closer look at this sentence by breaking it down. Kya? Kya is a question marker which comes at the beginning of the sentence. Next is aap. Aap means you. This is the respectful word for you and is used in formal situations. You should always use it with people you don't know or with elders. Next we have Angrezi. Angrezi means English. Next is bolte. Bolte means to speak. It is used when the subject is masculine. We use bolti when the subject is feminine. And finally, hai. Hai is a sentence ending particle used with the formal you. Once more, for a man, it's क्या आप अंग्रेजी बोलते हैं? क्या आप अंग्रेजी बोलते हैं? And for women, क्या आप अंग्रेजी बोलती हैं? क्या आप अंग्रेजी बोलती हैं? We are now going to make this sentence informal. First, we need to use the informal version of you, which is tum. If we change the word for you, we will also change the sentence ending particle to ho. Everything else stays the same. When speaking to younger people, it's acceptable to use the informal form, in which case you will say, "Kya tum अंग्रेजी बोलते हो?" to ask a young man or a boy, or "Kya tum अंग्रेजी बोलती हो?" to ask a young woman or a girl. Again, for a boy, "Kya tum अंग्रेजी बोलते हो?" and for a girl, "Kya tum अंग्रेजी बोलती हो?" The responses you will receive could be one of these three. हाँ, yes, हाँ, थोड़ी बहुत, a little, थोड़ी बहुत, नहीं, no I don't, नहीं. Now, let's review one more time. To ask a man in a formal situation if he knows English, we would say, "क्या आप अंग्रेजी बोलते हैं?" To ask a woman in a formal situation if she knows English, we would say, "क्या आप अंग्रेजी बोलती हैं?" To ask a man in an informal situation if he knows English, we would say, "क्या तुम अंग्रेजी बोलते हो?" To ask a woman in an informal situation if she knows English, we would say, "क्या तुम अंग्रेजी बोलती हो?" Now it's time for Prerna's points. India was once, for a long time, part of the British Empire, and so today, English is one of the national languages of India. When visiting tourist areas, you are sure to meet many people who can communicate with you in English. Still, a large part of the population can't understand English, and you can never go wrong if you learn the local language.
Want to get cheat sheets, audiobooks, lessons, apps, and much more every month for free? Just click the link in the description to get your free language gifts of the month.
In the last lesson, we learned the phrase, "क्या आप अंग्रेजी बोलते हैं?" Do you speak English? In this lesson, we are going to learn how to apologize in Hindi. There are a number of ways to apologize, but in a formal situation, you should use माफ कीजिए. माफ कीजिए. The first word, maaf, literally means forgive, and कीजिए is a polite form of the verb meaning please do. Thus, this expression actually means something like forgive me, please. Now let's hear it again. माफ कीजिए. You use माफ कीजिए when you might have said or done something offensive, wrong, or embarrassing. Sometimes you'll also hear people say क्षमा कीजिए. क्षमा कीजिए. This means please excuse me or I'm sorry. In Hindi, we have many synonyms for a single expression, usually a more colloquial Urdu form and a Sanskrit form, which is used in more formal situations. This is the case with I'm sorry as well. Maaf kijiye is the Urdu form and the corresponding Sanskrit form in Hindi is Kshama kijiye. The informal way to say I'm sorry is maaf karo. Maaf karo. Similarly, we could also say Kshama karo. Kshama karo. Let's review. Maaf kijiye or Kshama kijiye is a formal I'm sorry or excuse me. Maaf karo or Kshama karo is the informal I'm sorry or excuse me. These are all versatile phrases with a few different meanings depending on the situation. Whether you are trying to get someone's attention for a question, or making your way through a crowded area, or apologizing for stepping on someone's foot, these are all phrases you could use. Now, what if someone says maaf kijiye or kshama kijiye to you after having done something wrong? How would you respond? In this case, you could say कोई बात नहीं. कोई बात नहीं. This means something like it doesn't matter. कोई बात नहीं. Now it's time for Prerna's points. If someone bumps into you on the streets in India, don't expect an excuse me, especially in the big cities. Big crowds are very common and so is bumping into each other. Indians are usually very friendly people, but this does not seem like something worthy of an apology. Unless someone pushes you over so hard you fall on the ground, keep walking. In the last lesson, we learned some words used when apologizing in Hindi, including maaf kijiye and shama kijiye. In this lesson, we are going to learn numbers in Hindi. Yes, numbers, sankhyaएं, from 1 to 10. And we are going to learn them in only 3 minutes. 3 minute. Are you ready? Let's start. एक, एक, दो, दो, तीन, तीन, चार, चार, पांच, पांच, छः, छः, सात, सात, आठ, आठ, नौ, नौ, दस, दस. Okay, now repeat after me. I'll say the numbers and give you time to repeat each one. एक, दो, तीन, चार, पांच, छः, सात, आठ, नौ, 10. Great job. What is before ek? Do you know? It's of course 0, which in Hindi is shunya. Shunya. You don't have any more excuses. You can give your friends your cell phone number in Hindi. Let's try together. We'll use the phrase mera phone number, then your number, and then hai, which means my number is and your number. Mera phone number है. मेरा फ़ोन नंबर 9025572248 है. Can you read it by yourself? 9025572248. Perfect. Now it's time for Prerna's points. Did you know that in Hindi, numbers have their own Devanagari script? Yes, that's right. They don't look like the numbers we're used to seeing in the Western world. But actually, they're quite similar because the Western numeral system is the modified version of the Hindi numeral system. So, with just a little more effort, you can not only say the numbers in Hindi, you'll be able to read them as well. In the last lesson, we learned the numbers from 1 to 10. Have you forgotten? Here I'll tell you again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10. And now let's continue from 11. 11, 11, 12, 12, 13, 13, 14, 14, 15, 15, 16, 16, 17, 17, 18, 18, 19, 19, and finally we have 20, 20. Okay, now repeat after me. I'll say the numbers and give you time to repeat each one. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Hindi numbers from 1 to 100 are quite irregular with no definite pattern. So the only way to learn them is to memorize them. It might seem daunting at first, but you'll soon recognize a rough pattern. Let's get started with the tens. 30, 30, 40, 40, 50, 50, 60, 60, 70, 70, 80, 80, 90, 90, 100, 100, 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, 106, 107, 108, 109, 110, 111, 112, 113, 114, 115, 116, 117, 118, 119, 120, 121, 122, 123, 124, 125, 126, 127, 128, 129, 130, 131, 132, 133, 134, 135, 136, 137, 138, 139, 140, 141, 142, 143, 144, 145, 146, 147, 148, 149, 150, 151, 152, 153, 154, 155, 156, 157, 158, 159, 160, 161, 162, 163, 164, 165, 166, 167, 168, 169, 170, 171, 172, 173, 174, 175, 176, 177, 178, 179, 180, 181, 182, 183, 184, 185, 186, 187, 188, 189, 190, 1 नब्बे, 100. While you have to memorize many of the numbers, there is a trick that will make memorizing them incredibly easy. Notice that 30 is 30 and 40 is 40. Do you remember what 3 and 4 are in Hindi? Well, let me remind you. 3 is 3 and 4 is 4. As you can see, the sound T of 3, which is 3, is used in 30 or 30. 3, 30. Similarly, the sound cha in 4, which is 4, is used in 40 or 40. 4, 40. 5 in Hindi is 5, while 50 is 50. The common sound is pa. However, this does not apply to all numbers. 60 in Hindi is 60, while 6 is 6. As you can see, there is no common sound. 6, 60. The last thing to learn in this lesson is how to form compound numbers above 20. You already know that the number patterns in Hindi are quite irregular, so you might be wondering if you have to memorize each and every compound number. The answer is yes, you do. However, we are going to make your life a bit easier with our brilliant tip. For any numbers between 20 and 99, you read a variation of the number in the ones followed by the number in the tens. Let's try it out. How would you say 34 in Hindi? You first say a variation of 4 followed by a variation of 30. So 34 is literally read as 430, which is 34. Here, chaun is a variation of the number 4 or 4 and 30 is 30. 34. 61 is 61, which is literally read as 160. Ik is a variation of ek for 1, while sat is a variation of sat for 60. Iksat. Let's look at one more number, 95. In Hindi, it's panchanave, which is literally read as 590. Pancha is a variation of panch for 5 and nave is a variation of nabbe for 90. Panchanave. After only 2 lessons, you're now able to count to 100 in Hindi. In the next lesson, we are going to put your number knowledge to use. Do you have all the skills you need to go shopping in India? If not, I'll be waiting for you in our next Hindi in 3 minutes lesson. In the last lesson, we learned how to count in Hindi. I hope you spend some time practicing the numbers because they'll come in handy today. We're going to learn how to go shopping in India. Before we go, you need to know how to say how much is this? Iska bhav kya hai? Iska bhav kya hai? Are you ready to go shopping in India? Let's go. You see something you like and want to ask the shopkeeper how much it costs. The first thing to say to a shopkeeper is maaf kijiye. Do you remember what that means? Excuse me. Maaf kijiye, iska bhav kya hai? माफ कीजिए, इसका भाव क्या है? If you want to be more specific when asking how much is this and refer to a certain type of object, we just need to insert the object in between the word iska, between is and ka. Let's see an example. Suppose you want to buy a hat in the market. Hat in Hindi is topi. So, how much is this hat? इस टोपी का भाव क्या है? इस टोपी का भाव क्या है? But what if you want to buy several hats? Then you'd have to use a new word, inka, which means these. Excuse me, how much are these? In Hindi is माफ कीजिए, इनका भाव क्या है? माफ कीजिए, इनका भाव क्या है? At this point, the shopkeeper can answer by saying iska daam plus the cost plus hai, or ye plus the cost plus ka plus hai. For example, iska daam 50 रुपए है, or ye 50 रुपए का है. What number is 50? I'm not telling you. Okay, it's 50. It costs 50 rupees. Now it's time for Prerna's points. Another very common way of asking how much is it is ये कितने का है? And if you want to be more specific and mention the thing you want to know the price of, all you need to do is insert the object after ये. ये सेब कितने का है? Which means how much is this apple? At this point, can you count rupees in Hindi? We are going to learn how to do this and much more in the next lesson. I'll be waiting for you in our next Hindi in 3 minutes lesson. फिर मिलेंगे. See you then.
नमस्ते, हिंदी पॉड 101.com में स्वागत है।